Welcome to this audio summary of Intentional, the Science of Finishing What You Start by Chris Bailey. I'm your narrator, and over the next 10 minutes, we're going to dive into why we often struggle to cross the finish line and how we can rewire our brains to actually get things done. Grab a coffee, settle in, and let's get intentional. Section 1. The Gap Between Wanting and Doing. We've all been there. It's Sunday night and you have a vision. You're going to wake up at 6 a.m., hit the gym, clear your inbox, and finally start that side project. You feel motivated. You feel ready. But then Monday morning hits. The alarm goes off, and suddenly that future you who was so disciplined has been replaced by present you who just wants 5 more minutes of sleep and a bagel. Chris Bailey argues that the biggest hurdle to productivity isn't a lack of talent or even a lack of time. It's a gap. Specifically, the gap between intention and action. We are excellent at planning who we want to be, but we're often hijacked by our biology when it's time to actually be that person. This book is the bridge across that gap. It's not about hustle culture or working until you burn out. It's about the science of focus and the art of follow-through. Section 2. The Two Brains. Why we sabotage ourselves. To understand why we don't finish what we start, we have to look under the hood. Bailey explains that our brains are essentially running 2 different types of software at the same time. First, there's the prefrontal cortex. Think of this as the CEO of your brain. It's responsible for logical thinking, long-term planning, and, you guessed it, intentions. When you decide to learn a new language, that's your CEO talking. Then there's the limbic system. This is the ancient monkey brain. It doesn't care about your 5-year plan. It cares about survival, comfort, and immediate rewards. It wants dopamine, and it wants it now. When you sit down to write a report but end up scrolling through social media for an hour, that's your limbic system winning a wrestling match against your CEO. Finishing what you start requires learning how to help your CEO win more often. Section 3. The Myth of Motivation. One of the biggest traps we fall into is waiting to feel like it. We think motivation is a prerequisite for action. Bailey flips this on its head. He argues that action creates motivation, not the other way around. If you wait until you're in the mood to do something difficult, you're giving the limbic system total control. Think of motivation like a campfire. You can't just wait for a giant flame to appear so you can get warm. You have to gather the sticks, strike the match, and nurture the small spark. Once the fire is going, the heat, the motivation, keeps you going. But the initial effort, that has to be intentional. Section 4. The Power of Implementation Intentions. How do we actually start when we don't feel like it? Bailey points to a powerful tool called implementation intentions. Most of us set vague intentions. We say, I'm going to exercise more. That is too blurry for the brain. The CEO likes it, but the monkey brain doesn't know what to do with it, so it ignores it. An implementation intention uses a simple if-then or when-where formula. Vague, I'll work on my book today. Intentional, when I finish my first cup of coffee at the kitchen table, then I will open my laptop and write for 20 minutes. By deciding the time, place, and trigger beforehand, you automate the decision-making process. You don't have to decide to work, you just follow the script you wrote for yourself. Section 5. Breaking the project wall. Have you ever started a project with high energy but then hit a wall 3 weeks in? This usually happens because the project is too big and too abstract. Bailey suggests that finishing is actually a series of starts. If you're overwhelmed by a project, it's probably because you haven't defined the next physical action. Don't put plan wedding on your to-do list. That's a mountain, not a step. Instead, your next action is call the florist to check availability for June 12th. When a task is small and physical, the limbic system doesn't feel threatened. It thinks, oh, I can do that, and it lets you proceed without putting up a fight. Section 6. Managing your attention space. We live in a world designed to steal our focus. Bailey talks about attention space, the amount of mental room we have at any given moment to process information. Imagine your attention is like a small whiteboard. If the board is covered in scribbles, notifications, half-finished thoughts, worries about dinner, there's no room to draw anything new. To finish what you start, you have to aggressively clear that whiteboard. Hyperfocus. This is when you clear everything off the board except for one single task. You turn off the phone, close the extra tabs, and give that one thing your total presence. Scatter focus is the opposite, and it's just as important. It's intentional daydreaming. This is where your best ideas come from and where your brain recharges, so you have the energy to finish the deep work later. Section 7. The Rule of 3. To keep from getting overwhelmed, Bailey introduces a dead simple daily habit, the Rule of 3. Every morning, ask yourself, by the time the day is over, what 3 things will I want to have accomplished? That's it, just 3, not 20. By limiting yourself to 3 main intentions, you force your brain to prioritize. It prevents you from productive procrastination, the act of doing lots of small, easy tasks to avoid the one big, important task. Section 8. Dealing with resistance, the middle muddle. Every project has a middle muddle. It's that period after the initial excitement has faded, but the finish line is still miles away. This is where most people quit. Bailey's advice is lower your expectations for the process, but keep them high for the result. Sometimes finishing isn't about doing great work, it's just about doing the work. If you're writing a book and the words aren't flowing, give yourself permission to write garbage for an hour. You can't edit a blank page. Finishing requires the humility to be mediocre until the momentum kicks back in. Section 9. The role of dopamine. We often think of dopamine as the pleasure chemical, but it's actually the seeking chemical. It's what makes us want to check our phones or start a new project instead of finishing the old one. New things provide a massive dopamine hit. Finishing things, which often involves repetitive, boring work, does not. To combat this, you have to gamify the finish line. Reward yourself for milestones. Use a done list instead of just a to-do list, so you can see your progress. Visually seeing how far you've come triggers a sense of accomplishment that can rival the newness of a fresh distraction. Conclusion. Living intentionally. As we wrap up this summary, remember the core message. Productivity isn't about doing more, it's about doing what you intended to do. It is a radical act to decide what you want to achieve and then actually follow through on it. It requires understanding your biology, managing your attention, and being kind to yourself when you slip up. The science of finishing boils down to this. Define your intentions clearly. Shrink your tasks until they are impossible to fail. Protect your attention like it's your most valuable resource. When you live intentionally, you stop being a passenger in your own life and start being the pilot. Thank you for listening. Now, what is the one thing you are going to finish today?